Welcome into the Inside Scoop. Today is Wednesday, July 30th. I am your host, Josh Newberg. We've got a lot to talk about today. Excited to get to this one. We got Jeremy Birmingham. You guys might know him as Berm in the Ohio State market. We're going to get on and talk some recruiting with one of the best insiders in that market. We got Shea Dixon from the Bengal Tiger in Tennessee Intel. We got Boo Carter update. Today was the first day of practice. Was he out there? We got Brent Hubbs from VolQuest on the show. We got a big one. Let's get to it. Let's talk a little Ohio State recruiting. I got Jeremy Birmingham, Letterman Row. You may also know him from the Austin and Berm Show, 97.1 The Fan, and on YouTube. Jeremy, great to have you on. I want to talk a little bit about this QB situation and how Ohio State's two current commits are going to factor in, because we know you got Lincoln Kienholz, Julian Sayin battling it out at the top. You got Tavian St. Clair from last year waiting for his opportunity. And then you got two commits for 26 and 27. What's Ohio State's strategy here with so many quality young arms?
Get more of them, because the Buckeyes would like to add a second in the class of 2027 if they can do it. They were very high on Teddy Girard, who just committed to Notre Dame.
Yep.
And honestly, they're looking at it from the perspective that in this era of college football, there are no guarantees. So if you are Ohio State right now and you're looking at your current roster, you think you've got a quarterback competition here between Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz, and there's no guarantee that the loser of that battle is on the roster next year. So now all of a sudden you change your entire dynamic. You go from having Lincoln Kienholz and Julian Sayin and Tavian St. Clair to having the winner in Tavian St. Clair and then Luke Fahey. And then the year after that, whether it's Julian Sayin or Lincoln Kienholz who wins the job in 2025, and then subsequently, likely in 2026, you only have Tavian St. Clair and Philip Fahey. So then you need to add to that. So it's really about stockpiling the position. It hasn't changed fundamentally from what Ryan Day's always wanted to do. His goal is to have 4 scholarship quarterbacks at all time, 4 quality quarterbacks who can contribute. The difference is now you have to pay for them. And so the calculus changes quite a bit. And for the Buckeyes perspective, it's understanding that even a player like Philip Fahey, who I think on 3, we have him as the number 25 ranked quarterback in the country, you can't get that for free. There are 100 other programs in the country who would love to have Philip Fahey as the face of their program. So this is a position that is going to always be a premium in football, and you better be willing to pay for it. Yeah. Ryan Day, because of his reputation, because of his legacy as a quarterback developer, I think is able to convince kids like Philip Fahey that the best opportunity for him is to come to Ohio State and learn for 2 years. And maybe you don't even play in Columbus, but guess what? By the time you're in year 3 and maybe you're moving on to a different program, you're going to have a really good reputation and a good resume to go start somewhere else.
All right, we're going to talk a little NIL strategy, but first, Ohio State fans, do me a favor, jump on board, hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruiting channel. All right, so Ohio State recruiting with Mark Pantoni and the boys in charge, you know, they're always kind of on the cutting edge of whatever's new and happening. So what has Ohio State, what have you seen with Ohio State? What have they learned about quarterback recruiting in this modern NIL era?
I mean, I think, honestly, Josh, I think that's it. That it can't be free. But also, the more important thing is that and we've seen some schools do this. Lincoln Riley, notably, is one of them. Dabo Swinney's tried it, where you alternate years and you go big-time national guy, and then you find someone to just fill the roster. Because of transfers, because of free roster movement, because of NIL, I don't think anybody in the position of a school like Ohio State wants to subscribe to that theory, because there's no guarantee that even a developmental guy is going to be there for 2 years if he doesn't play. So yeah. The Buckeyes' philosophy has always been find the best quarterback for your program and go get him. So now that question is, how do you pay for it? And certainly, as I said earlier, that is the question. Ohio State is not beholden to national quarterback rankings and that kind of stuff. I mean, if we go back to the class of 2023, that was the year with Arch Manning and Nico Iamaleava, and the Buckeyes had a commitment early in the process from Brock Glenn, who was now at Florida State, but they kept looking, and then they found Lincoln Kienholz, who was committed to Washington, and made a move there. But this goes all the way back even to 2020, when Ohio State had Jack Miller, who was early on in his recruiting process, a very highly ranked kid out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And throughout the process, 3 months, 4 months before signing day in 2020 or the summer of 2019, the Buckeyes found a little quarterback in California named C.J. Stroud and said, hey, maybe this one's better. And so it's a constant evaluation. It's a constant refreshing of the big board, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, because of how early these kids are being evaluated, because of how early they're being recruited, a lot of these kids are being recruited and committing before they've even played a season of varsity football. So the way you look at them and the way that you evaluate them is necessarily and naturally going to change over their high school careers.
Yeah, and it sounds like Ohio State also takes into account in recruiting that attrition at the position is just going to happen. So kind of like you said at the start, just stacking these arms on top is just one way to plan for attrition as well.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. I mean, that's you have to because Devin Brown, for example, I mean, another guy that was not in the plans originally when he ended up committing to Ohio State after decommitting from USC just a week before signing day in the class of 2022. That only happened because Quinn Ewers reclassified in late 2021. So right. Everything is, they've been forced to adapt at that position more specifically than any other in the last 6-7 years. I mean, hell, we can go back to 2019 and Dwan Mathis being the longtime commitment, and then Justin Fields becomes available in the transfer portal, and then Dwan Mathis ends up at Georgia. It is. They've never been settled at that position. And part of that is because Ryan Day is a former quarterback himself, and he knows exactly what he's looking for, and he isn't going to take someone that can't do what he wants. But some of it is just being quick to react in a world of college sports that is changing faster than most of us can talk. And I can talk fairly fast.
Since you're new to Letterman Row, I mean, the 2026 cycle, it's not over, but a lot of the ducks are in the pond already. So I just wanted to ask you, what did you think has been the most compelling storyline when it comes to Ohio State recruiting in 2026?
I mean, I don't know if compelling is the word. I think from a fan perspective, the most frustrating thing continues to be the defensive end position and the recruiting that's happened there in the last 4 cycles for Ohio State. You go back to 2021 and you sign Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, and they're both top 5 players overall, and you expect that rocket ship with Larry Johnson is just going to continue. And then the NIL world happened, and like quarterback, like cornerback, defensive end in the NFL is a high dollar position. Ohio State views it similarly, but they have yet been able to really manage that position in this new era. And that happened again this summer with the commitment of Carter Meadows to Michigan. That was a big one for Ohio State. They felt like they were there. Luke Wafel, who obviously committed to USC, that was a back and forth of negotiation in the last 24 hours, and the Buckeyes thought that they had what they needed to get done there. And then you wake up the next morning and the phone call says, hey, actually there's another 6 figures, another 7 figures on the line from somewhere else. And at that moment, everything you've done changes. And so the Buckeyes, because Ross Bjork is very involved in the administration of the new college sports committee and all of the rules that they're trying to put in place after the House settlement, they have very intentionally been handling the NIL in this cycle with their one hand tied behind their back when it comes to high school players. That's not to say they haven't been aggressive, because they certainly have been. But if you look at guys like Chris Henry and Caden Dixon-Wyatt and Kari Wilder, Sam Greer, et cetera, they're not asking guys to come play for free, but there is a premium price tag that is being applied to a lot of these kids at premium positions. And Ohio State is just not changing their philosophy on whether or not it's smart to spend $7.5 million on a player over 3 years when you don't know if they're going to be there in 2.
Yeah. And when it comes to NIL, I mean, you kind of have 2 buckets, right? You have the high school bucket of NIL spending, and you have the roster retention bucket of NIL spending. And I think Ohio State probably up there when it comes to retention. You don't see a lot of Ohio State's impact players ever leaving the program, really. So I wanted to get your opinion. Where do you think Ohio State ranks in high school spending at the NIL level? Like, are they amongst the elite? Are they kind of in a tier 2 or tier 3 when it comes to that high school spending?
I mean, they certainly have been in the top tier over the last couple of years when we were playing in the wild, wild west of the collectives. And that was that's all that there was. But now in this era, in 2026, I would say they're probably in the middle tier. Again, guys like Kari Wilder and Sam Greer and Chris Henry Jr. and Blaine Bradford are not coming to Ohio State for free.
Right.
The Buckeyes were aggressive. They made moves early to make sure that those guys were locked up, because those are the players they've really, really prioritized in this class. But the bottom line is, at Ohio State, if you're not going to be able to contribute in year one, which is a tall task for any freshman, I mean, there's very few guys that have done it throughout history. Unless you're really one of those dudes, unless you're that guy like a Jeremiah Smith, it is hard to justify paying double, 7 figures for kids to come in and develop. So the Buckeyes are trying to take a more balanced approach. I think, when you ask about it from a high school perspective, certainly I would say right now they're in the second tier. No one's going to cry for them around the country that Ohio State isn't spending more money. Most people still believe that the Buckeyes won a national championship only because of NIL. But as you mentioned, like that roster a year ago, the famed $20 million roster was almost entirely a matter of retention and retaining the guys that were on the roster. Yes, you added Caleb Downs. Yes, you added Seth McLaughlin, but those were not players that were going to be there unless Nick Saban retired. And then Quinshon Judkins was just sort of a gift from the SEC gods. So it's not a situation where Ohio State was going out and saying, we're going to offer these kids millions of dollars. It's a situation where Davison Igbinosun and Tywan Malone at Ole Miss knew Quinshon Judkins pretty well. And those two are both in Columbus now and said, hey, come give us a look. And that wouldn't have happened if Travion Henderson wasn't okay with it. So the roster was built in such a way that I think Ohio State's trying to balance the truly high-end high school prospect and retaining your roster and developing it, because, in this NIL era, Josh, like the teams that have been built exclusively through high-dollar prospects out of high school, you're going to have to do some digging to find one that's been successful to this point.
There it is. Ohio State talk with Jeremy Birmingham of Letterman Row, also Austin and Berm Show on 97.1 The Fans YouTube channel. Go check it out. Jeremy, thanks for dropping by the Inside Scoop today.
Glad to be here, man. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Let's talk a little LSU recruiting, because the Tigers have a shot to finish the summer even stronger than they entered it. So on Saturday, we got defensive lineman Deuce Gerald's making an announcement. Shay, does LSU have a shot here?
They have a shot. I mean, look, the connection is that he's got a lot of family in the Baton Rouge area. Scotlandville, a school right outside of Baton Rouge, is where his father played, and his father was recruited to Ole Miss and played there, but recruited by Frank Wilson, who is known as one of the best recruiters in the SEC across the past couple of decades, and is back at LSU again and has spearheaded this recruitment. And they're certainly in, as Chad Simmons and Steve Waltfong have noted, maybe the top two here. His list is longer than that with hats on the table, but Josh, a lot of people have thought Oregon has been the team to beat. He's going to leave the state of Georgia for college. His dad did play at Ole Miss, so they are in the mix here and can't be slept on. But there was a point a couple of weeks ago where I thought, hey, look, LSU is probably in the lead right now. I think there's been some jockeying back and forth that could continue up to Saturday, but right now I would maybe give Oregon the edge over LSU, and we'll see how the coming days unfold.
All right. Well, I think we're going to be covering or streaming Deuce Gerald's. We're working on that. There's some bit of initial talk. So you guys, that's why you got to be subscribed, because you get notified when we go live. I don't even know when we go live, so how are you guys going to know? Well, if you're subscribed, then you'll get a notification. All right, let's talk about, do you think, Shay, that LSU could end up landing the number 1 and number 2 wide receivers? Because on August 8th, out of Mississippi, Jace Matthews, the number 2 ranked wide receiver in America, is set to make his decision with Tristan Keys already on board. This would be one hell of a haul for LSU.
Yeah, we just talked about Deuce Gerald's a top 10 D lineman, and the most recent commitment, 5-star for LSU, was Lamar Brown. He's going to play D-line. We have him ranked as the number 1 athlete in the country. We've laughed about how that doesn't happen often for a offensive defensive lineman combo player. But LSU also has Richard Anderson committed, who's a 5-star. And if Lamar Brown weren't ranked as an athlete, was ranked as a D lineman, that would give them the number 1 and 2 D linemen in this class, both from Louisiana. Can they pull off 1 and 2 at receiver? It's a border state war, right? It's Mississippi. LSU's recruited Mississippi very well in recent years, notably this season. I think they have 3 commits right now, looking to add a 4th. And obviously, Jace Matthews has been high on Auburn for a long time. We have him at Rivals as the number 2 receiver in the country. So we're talking about this. Can Tristan Keys at 1 and Matthews both land at LSU? I do think that Auburn and the work they put in, Derek Nix, the relationship he has dating back to his time at Ole Miss is big, and he's very good friends with Deuce Knight, who plays quarterback and obviously is a key piece to kind of helping Auburn recruit. At the same time, LSU surged here, Josh, and Tristan Keys, all of those guys in Mississippi, they're pitching in. LSU has a number of staff members who have recruited Jace Matthews heavily. They recently hired Kevin Bolden from Ole Miss is into the recruiting and personnel department. Donovan Tate runs recruiting. He went to Hattiesburg High, where Tristan Keys goes to high school. So they've got a lot of connections here where you would think, okay, they can be in the mix. Don't sleep on A&M. I think they're also the third team after missing out on some receivers along the way. But most people would say they would think Auburn leads, but Josh, we've seen it with more than a week to go. Things can always shift. We don't always know where these kids are leaning behind closed doors. And I think Jay's, from speaking with sources, is the NIL and the rev share, all that about looks the same. He's going to pick where he thinks education, development, fit, all of these things are most important. And that's when you sit down and go over the checklist. So I honestly don't think Jace Matthews has decided yet. And from whom I've talked to, he has not told the team yet. So I say it's LSU or Auburn. Give me an A&M as the dark horse here, with the commitment coming a little bit more than a week away.
Yeah. And then a little bit more than 2 weeks after that, Darius Gray is set to announce his decision, another 5-star potentially landing with LSU. What it's going to take for the Tigers to win out on this one?
We see Brad Davis, LSU's O-line coach, and Carl St. Cyr, who works as an assistant on the recruiting side of the O-line. They seem to do this every year. They go and flip Weston Davis from A&M as a 5-star. They go and grab 5 stars late in the game. And how long have we sat around and talked about Darius Gray out of Virginia being a top target for LSU? Steve Wiltfong has his RPM pick on LSU still, and he's going to have a number of hats on the table, Josh. But I compared this one to Lamar Brown, the 5-star who just committed. He had a Miami hat, a Texas hat. Everyone knew he was deciding between LSU and Texas A&M. He picks LSU. This one, I think everyone agrees it's LSU or South Carolina, and it's a bit of the inverse right now. LSU's fighting the distance factor. South Carolina is the school closer to home and has been recruiting him a long time. So it's going to be one of those two teams. I think he's using these next few weeks to really kind of feel out now that the dust has settled. We're in a dead period that's gone on for a month and will continue through his commitment at the end of August, a 2-month dead period. And I think that gives him and his family a chance to say, hey, where do we think the best fit is, regardless of distance, all of those things. Where do you think you'll be developed? Where do you see yourself? And he's always spoken very highly of LSU. So honestly, and if you speak to sources on South Carolina, LSU sides, I think both would tell you this is a 50-50 race, and these next few weeks will decide it.
All right, so we'll see what happens with Darius Gray. But even without Darius Gray on this commit list, like you said, LSU has 3 5-star commits: Tristan Keys, Lamar Brown, Richard Anderson. What's the odds that they can hold on to all 3 when the ink is dried on signing day?
Yeah, I just dropped some new tidbits on Tristan Keys and kind of the developments there that LSU's done to work to continue to keep Tristan committed. Let's not overlook, Josh. He went on spring visits. He went on summer official visits to other schools, Miami, Tennessee, a number of schools who, they can play the NIL game
heavily.
A&M. They can play the NIL game, the rev share game, all this stuff. And he never decommitted. He stayed committed to LSU. He gave them his final visit. Now we're, as I said, a month into a 2-month-long dead period, and he's still committed. So I think you can feel as good as you possibly could about a number 1 receiver who is not from the state of Louisiana. At least he is from the Pine Belt, which is a 2.5-hour drive, as I've noted before. LSU's closer to home for him than any school that has recruited him. And really kind of significantly been in the mix here. So they've got a super talented class already, obviously Keys being the headliner. And then you look at the in-state kids, Richard Anderson, number 1 D lineman coming out of New Orleans, and then Lamar Brown, number 1 D lineman coming out of Baton Rouge. Both those guys, Brown committed recently. You feel like he sticks. And Richard Anderson didn't take any visits this summer that weren't LSU. And for a number 1 D lineman, a top 20 player, to do that, I think speaks volumes to him saying, hey, look, I feel good about where things are. And look, the pitch to him and the reality is that he's going to battle Lamar Brown for the number one prospect in Louisiana. And both those guys are going to have a chance to play a lot early on as true freshmen. So handicapping it, I feel the best about the two Louisiana kids, but not far behind is Keys, just given what I've heard, what we've seen from Keys, dating back to his commitment in March, and then him being a kid that's from South Mississippi, which isn't far from Baton Rouge.
Do we know how many days Tristan Keys has been committed? Do we know when his 300-day anniversary is?
March 22nd to now, however long that is.
All right. No, we'll see what happens. Shea Dixon.
Keys and Matthews, really quickly, they've both talked development a lot, and it sure doesn't hurt that Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are out there signing very big contracts after winning a national championship here. So just a note on the wide receiver front as to why they're having a lot of success here recently there.
Yeah, and it looks like, this season could go a little bit differently. It looks like the offense is big things expected from this offense. I think we could see a lot of fireworks coming on that side of the ball, so that'll also give them a good chance to hold on to some of these guys. Shea Dixon, Bengal Tiger, thanks for dropping by the Inside Scoop today.
Thanks, Josh.
We're talking a little Tennessee recruiting. Brent Hubbs, VolQuest here, and today was actually the first day of fall camp, so wanted to ask you about sophomore DB Boo Carter. Seems like just yesterday we were talking about his recruitment almost every other day on this channel, and now he's already a sophomore out in Knoxville. Now there's been some controversy, so what is the current status around Boo Carter?
Well, he's on the team, but he's not with the team on the practice field. So he stretched and was with the team for some of the early pre-practice stuff, if you will, on day one. And then he went off after he got stretched out, and he went off to his own conditioning and part of the things he has to do to try to work his way back onto this team and into good graces. Again, he's still on the team, but to be a part of the active participant in practice and all that. He spent the afternoon doing community service, actually went to Children's Hospital and spent the afternoon visiting with some patients there.
Okay.
These were all part of the things set out in front of Boo Carter that he has to do in order to put himself back in good standing with his teammates and with his coaches. So I think for Boo Carter, everybody wants to know when. Is he going to be back for game one? When's he going to be on the practice field? I don't think we know the answer to that. I think right now the expectation is there probably isn't much expectations. The hope is that he stacks good day upon good day upon good day and continues to do everything that's being asked of him in an effort to win back the trust of his teammates and his coaches.
So it sounds like we're in like the healing process between Carter and Tennessee. At least it doesn't seem as contentious as it did at least a week ago.
Well, he's in town, so yeah. It's different. I mean, he came back to Knoxville on Monday. It's to my understanding he visited with the team in a team meeting and stood up and addressed the team as an entire group on Tuesday. But at the same time, too, I think at this point, actions speak a lot louder than words. And that's why I think this is a slow process. I think that's why Josh Heupel did not put any kind of timetable on it.
Right.
It's a we'll see, because he's got to work his way back, because as a student athlete, you can make mistakes and your teammates will forgive you pretty quickly. That's just kind of how it's always been. But when you bail on your teammates, when you don't show and you don't put in the work that your teammates are doing or your teammates are forced to do extra things as a punishment because you weren't there or you were tardy, you got to work to get your teammates' trust back. And I think that's where Boo Carter is right now with his teammates and with the coaching staff as well. He's trying to earn their trust back.
Yeah. Wow. What a unique offseason it's been for Tennessee in terms. We almost forget about the whole Mike Matthews kerfuffle, whatever you want to call that, which was a couple months before Nico, which was a couple months before Boo Carter. So what has Tennessee and Josh Heupel learned about roster management or NIL over the past 6 months?
I think what you've learned is that we live in a world with agents and family members, and there's nothing you can do if they elect to want to play it out in the public eye.
Yeah.
You got to make a decision on whether or not you want them to be a part of your team, and if they play it in the public eye and you don't like that, you want to move on, then you can do that if you want to. But this is the world we live in, because I mean, you mentioned it. Mike Matthews, Boo Carter was public in December about a new deal. Boo Carter was public in the spring about almost going back into the portal. Everybody forgets Ricky Gibson's parents put out that Ricky Gibson planned to enter the portal when it opened up in the spring. That was a late February, March announcement that they made on social media. And now Ricky never missed any time with his teammates and ultimately ended up deciding to stay. So Tennessee's had some high profile stuff. Obviously, Nico is the highest of high profiles. I think the lesson learned here is that everybody better deal with this. I mean, this is just a part of the way agents are going about it. They're leaking out there that this kid's interested in this school, or this school's interested in their guy. And that's just a part of the new age of college athletics. And you better put on some thick skin and understand that. And also at the same time, too, you got to make decisions on whether or not you want that person to be a part of your program. If they're going to play everything out publicly, how committed are they? All those things you have to look into and see. I mean, every situation is different. For example, Nico's situation, when he did not come to practice on that Friday before the spring game and the portal window was a week away from opening, you knew he was leaving. I mean, he was not staying. If he bailed on a formal practice and didn't come, they were out the door. So there was no point in trying to figure anything out at that point. Boo Carter's situation, he's not asking for more money at this point. Where can he go? Nowhere right now. So that situation is different than Nico's situation. And I think the lesson here is that there is no blanket plan. Okay, here's the magic formula for how you do this, because it's human and everybody's situation is totally different, and how everybody manages it is different.
Yeah, and I think we learned as reporters, as fans, that where there's smoke, there's fire. Every time there was a little, dust up on the message board about one of these guys, it kind of came to fruition, even though maybe it took a couple weeks before that happened. It seems like, the people that are putting these rumors out there are doing so intentionally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some of that for sure. I mean, I can tell you this. I mean, we had multiple stories written about guys going into the portal because of rumors that we heard that never came to fruition. It never came about. And that's happening everywhere around the country.
Yeah, it really is.
And I'm sure there's other places around the country where there's been some public stuff. Tennessee's different because, and it's fueled by the Nico stuff, because Nico was the first big NIL deal coming out of high school, right? Yeah. I mean, he was the one, he drew national attention. Everybody was talking, what are they doing? These people are paying this kind of money for this person. Now a quarterback making $3 million a year, we don't think anything about it. Yeah, it's normal. Hey, you got him on the cheap, right? And so because Nico was so high profile coming out, and then he was so high profile in his departure, that has put Tennessee in the spotlight with roster management.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to some more exciting, some more positive recruiting news. Savion Hyder, he's committing in about 3 weeks. It'll be August 22nd is his decision day. So what has Tennessee done to position themselves so well with the number one running back in America?
I think it's the relationship that Darrell Sims has built with Savion and with Savion's family. I think there's been a ton of conversations and a ton of dialogue. I think Tennessee has kind of approached his recruitment the way Savion and his family want to approach it. It's very private. You don't hear a lot of rumors. You don't hear a lot of this. There's not a lot of, hey, he's in town or he's coming to town. Obviously, Savion wants everything done on the quiet. He doesn't talk a whole lot. But I think Tennessee has been in constant conversation with him, and I think they've built a really good bond and a really good relationship with him that's created a comfort level for him and his family. I think Michigan's done the same thing. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's like Tennessee's way out in front or anything like that. I mean, I think it's a toss-up as to where he lands. But why is Tennessee a finalist? I think Tennessee's a finalist because of the relationships that Darrell Sims and Josh Heupel and this Tennessee staff has built with Savion and his entire family.
Yeah, and I think Tennessee is more of a finalist than even a Georgia or an Ohio State. I think, and just by having the experts come on here, it's Tennessee or Michigan. And it doesn't really seem, I mean, not to say that this isn't an NIL battle. I mean, the money will be on the table for the number one running back in America, but I don't get the sense that this is coming down to who has the bigger bag. Do you?
No, I would agree with that. And I think when you're talking about the number one back in the country and a top 10 nationally player, I think you get to the point where it's pretty even, right? Like, It's not like somebody's going to be that somebody's bag is so much bigger than somebody else's. I mean, I think everybody's in the ballpark there. So I think what happens in those cases is it gets back to a little old school recruiting, and it gets back to the relationship, and it gets back to the comfort level, and it gets back to depth charts. It gets back to offensive success and scheme, and how all those things work. Distance from home can factor in. Weather could even factor in. You get a little old school feel when you get to the point where you think, you know what, there's not enough of a separation financially that you're going to, quote, buy a guy away from someone else. And I don't think that is the case at all with Savion Hyder. I think Tennessee has done a really good job of getting him on campus multiple times. Official visit, unofficial visit, and I think that tells you the interest level, the relationships he has with Tennessee, that he feels compelled to continue to come back and check out Tennessee and learn more about it, because I think he is very much a guy who's going to have a checklist, pros and cons, and I don't think money is the single most pro and con on his list.
All right. Tennessee currently sitting at number 14 as we head into the season, but as we mentioned, there's still a couple big names on the board. So for various reasons, all eyes will be on Tennessee this season. So how good, if the season is a great season, how good do you think this class could end up being?
Well, I mean, I think it's a good class now, but you're sitting there with potential 5 stars. You know, we just talked about Hyder. Where does he go? That changes the landscape of this class a great deal. Where does Tristan Keys land? Okay, with the wide receiver who's committed to LSU. Chad Simmons has said that he thinks Tennessee's the biggest threat to LSU. Now A&M probably feels like they're in a good spot to potentially flip him as well. I think what's interesting with Tristan is, does he commit somewhere sooner rather than later? And if he commits, does he continue to take visits? Or is he kind of done with that part of it and he makes a commitment and he's done? We'll see. He's comfortable with Tennessee. I think he's comfortable with a lot of schools. Faison Brandon, Tennessee's quarterback commit in this class, has a really good relationship with him. Can that be enough to be a difference maker when it's all said and done? I don't know, but Tennessee's definitely going to be a finalist for him, the same way they are with Hyder. And then I think Tennessee's looking to maybe try to flip a couple of guys, who are edge rushers that are committed elsewhere. We'll see if anything happens with some of those guys. But, Tennessee's looking, I think after you get past Key and Hyder, if there's anything else really added to the class, it's probably a flip.
All right, Brent Hubbs, really busy day over on VolQuest. Thanks for making a little time to jump on the inside scoop. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.